Forgiveness and justice are typically assumed to be antithetical to each other, but both are held out in the Christian faith as being good, and we understand societally that both are good and both are important for healing. At the same time, just as we define the concept of justice, we need to look at the definition of forgiveness. So we're going to look at just a very basic dictionary definition, because sometimes that's the fastest way to get to where we want to go. So Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines forgiveness as giving up resentment or a desire to retaliate. Very simply, it is giving up my desire for vengeance. So there are two key things about this definition that help us understand how forgiveness and justice intersect. And the first is this. In the definition of forgiveness, what is the thing being given up relative to? It's relative to me. The thing being given up is my personal desire for vengeance, my personal desire for retaliation. But justice, is that conformity to my standard? No, justice is conformity to an external standard, a standard that exists apart from how I personally respond. And that means that my ability to release the desire to retaliate, to release vengeance, does not change that external standard. I can release bitterness and vengeance, and the evilness of what was done to me does not change at all. The aberration from that standard is not affected. So I can pursue justice and pursue it very bitterly and very angrily and never see it accomplished. Or I can pursue justice from a heart of forgiveness, because whether or not justice is done is completely outside of how I personally respond to my abuser. You see, the Christian faith teaches that not only does God love, but that God brings justice because he loves. That he pours out his wrath on evil because he cares. Because that evil is even more glaring and blatant to him than it is to me. Martin Luther King Jr. explained it this way, saying, "The God whom we worship is not a weak and incompetent God. He is able to beat back gigantic waves of opposition and bring low prodigious mountains of evil. The ringing testimony of the Christian faith is that God is able." Very often in our culture, we think of the idea of God punishing as something that is wrong or vindictive. But part of what we need to understand tonight is that that bringing of justice is motivated by love. And intrinsically, we know this. I want you guys to think back to another very iconic sexual assault case that we had in the last few years, the Brock Turner case. You guys familiar with that case? So Brock Turner was found sexually assaulting an unconscious woman behind a dumpster. And she stood up at his sentencing hearing, and she gave an incredibly powerful and heart-wrenching statement detailing the absolutely devastating impact that Brock's abuse had had on her. And what did the judge do? He turned around and he sentenced Brock to 6 months, and he only served 3 of it. And culturally and societally, what did we do? Did we all stand up and say, "What a loving judge. We need more judges like that"? No, we didn't. We all intrinsically knew that the most unloving thing that judge could do was to act like what happened to that woman didn't matter. To act like justice didn't need to be done. We intrinsically know that a God who doesn't punish evil and a judge who doesn't punish evil is not a loving judge. But that is not the God that Christianity teaches. I believe that when God looked down at my abuse, he saw that little girl and he said, "That matters to me, and I will punish it." And this gives incredible freedom as an abuse survivor. Forgiveness, that giving up of that personal resentment and vengeance, doesn't change that external standard. And that means I can release my personal retaliation, my personal desire for vengeance, because I have a God I can trust to bring justice. There is a straight line and there is a crooked line. There is something that exists outside of, as Martin Luther King Jr. put it, utilitarian demands and that which is politic and that which is popular. And because I am no longer dependent on those facets for my healing, I am able to pursue both justice and forgiveness simultaneously. Justice motivated by love, that cares about those around me, that can look at something and say that is evil and it matters and it must end. But then Christianity and the Christian faith goes a step beyond that. The Christian faith teaches that God's love always requires justice because evil is real and the damage matters. But it also teaches that God, in his love and mercy, came willing to take that justice upon himself. And this is something that's very unique in the Christian faith that helps us understand how justice and forgiveness reconcile together. This is what's referred to in Christianity as the atonement, the idea that Christ took the punishment that we deserve and that evildoers deserve upon himself. So what this means is that those who repent are able to experience forgiveness not because what they did wasn't terrible, not because saying magic words make it go away, but because justice was done on their behalf. But only in the Christian faith can forgiveness and justice both exist simultaneously because we have a God who took both upon himself. And because I have been the recipient of that type of forgiveness, I am able to express that type of forgiveness to someone who has abused me. This means that pursuing justice, pursuing conformity to what is right, is able to be done in tandem with forgiving. And they are both something that I should pursue.